Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Pada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Shri Chinmaya Yatishasya Gurum Vande Tapovanam Tamahimavad Vibhutim Vai Jnana Vairagya Rupinam Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahma Vidvaram Satgurum Brahma Vidvaram. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om, we are going to do the fourth shloka of Dakshinamurti Stotram, but I'll just briefly summarize the first three shlokas that we have done. And in the first shloka, Bhagavan Shankaracharya ji talks about the jiva, the individual who needs to realize. Let's think about it. There are three, Jiv, Jagat, and Ishvara. And of course, Brahman is the substratum. But does Ishvara need to realize? No. Can the Jagat, can the world realize? No, that is inert. This table, this chair, this computer cannot realize. For that matter, even plants, birds, animals, fish, they cannot. So the only person that needs to realize among this triad is the Jiva. So Shankaracharya ji says this world is like a Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagri, just as a world seen in a mirror, or as we had talked about, a movie seen on a screen. The screen is the substratum Brahman, which is unaffected, and the movie is this world. And the Jiva is the one that needs to. And how does he do that? With the help of Guru Dakshinamurti. Yes, Sakshat Gurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanam Eva Dvayam. So the Guru tells us that this self, my own self, is that totality, that Brahman, and this whole universe is in me, just as in a dream. Yatha Nidraya, just as in a dream, the whole world is projected in me. So same way, in me, the consciousness, this whole world is expressing. So that was the first shloka. And so the student, ignorant student, approaches the Guru. Here it is Dakshinamurti Bhagwan, Lord Shiva himself, who gives us this knowledge. And this teaching has been summarized by Shankaracharya ji in these 10 verses. In the second shloka, we heard about Bhagwan, or this Ishvara, this creator. And how does this creator create the world? So he says, Bijas yantariva ankuro jagadidam. Just as a seed is there and the entire tree is unmanifest in the seed, and in the right condition, it becomes manifest, unmanifest. Also, Bhagavan says in the Bhagavad Gita, avyakta dini bhutani vyakta madhyani bharata avyak nidhanani eva tatraka paridevana. So there is no need to be mourning because we are unmanifest, we become manifest, and we will go back to unmanifest. So this creator creates the world like a magician. Maya viva vijrimbayatyapi maha yogi vayasvechaya. Just as a magician creates this world, this magic world where we go there, we are deluded by the magic, but the magician knows that whatever he is creating on the stage is an illusion. And the second example was given of Vishwamitra Rishi, who created this heaven for Trishanku, which was also an illusory heaven. So this creator creates this world as an illusion, and you and I get caught in this magic of this divine magician, but the magician never gets caught in his own magic. So that was the second. So me, Jiva, second is Ishvara. And the third shloka talks about Tattvamasi, you are that. And we talked in a lot of detail about Vachyartha and Lakshyartha, that how can I be that? So they say that the essence of both of me and Ishvara is Brahman. But I think myself to be separate from Ishvara. As long as I am identified with this body, I and Ishvara will be separate. Ishvara is the creator, I am the created, he is vast, I am limited, he is all-knowing, I am ignorant. So all those differences are there because Ishvara is the totality, but the essence of me and the essence of Ishvara is one. So Vachyartha is what I call myself as Anil or Jayashri or Kusum, but Lakshyartha indicated by me, I, is that Atman, the Brahman. And same way for Ishvara, the Vachyartha is this world, this Maya. That's the conditioning. Ishvara's conditioning is Maya, but free of conditioning, Ishvara is Brahman. Just as my conditioning is this world, this body, mind, and intellect, but free of this conditioning, I am Brahman, Om, and so is that. So that is how Tattvamasi, that's how I can be that. So this is the essence of the three shlokas. It's fairly extensive, but I just summarized in brief. So today we'll go to the shloka number 4. Ambika, would you like to chant, please? Thank you. So I'll chant and you can. Nana chidra ghato darasthita maha deepa prabha bhaswaram.
Nana chidra ghato darasthita maha deepa prabha bhaswaram.
Jnanam yasya tu chakshuradikarana dvara bahi spandate.
Jnanam yasya tu chakshuradikarana dvara bahi spandate.
Janamiti tameva bhantam anubhat etat samastam jagat.
Janamiti tameva bhantam anubha yetat samastam jagata.
Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Nama Idam Shri Dakshina Murtaye.
Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Nama Idam Shri Dakshina Murtaye.
We will all chant together. Nana Chidra Ghato Darasthita Maha Deepa Prabha Bhaswaram Jnanam Yasya Tu Chakshuradikarana Dvara Bahispandate. Janamiti tameva bhantam anubhat etat samastam jagat. Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Nama Idam Shri Dakshina Murtaye. So Bhagwan Shankaracharya ji says that I prostrate tasmai to that Shri Guru Murtaye. This is the fourth case. Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Nama Idam. This prostration is to who? Shri Dakshina Murtaye. To Shri Dakshina Murti Bhagwan, Lord Shiva himself, who manifested as Guru to give this knowledge to the four Shishyas and through them to all of us. So my prostration is to that Dakshina Murti, who is the supreme teacher. Now, how does this knowledge manifest? So in the first three, we talked about Jiva, Ishvara, and the oneness. In the fourth one is how is our experience of this world? How do we experience this world? Now, materialists, we can start with their theory. They say, why do you have to bring Atma, God, Ishvara? That is all nonsense. You know, elements got together and the elements have intrinsic existence and they have the ability to produce life. So when the elements got together, and then that's how the protozoa was formed. And then through the Darwin's theory of evolution, it slowly evolved from protozoa to fish to, you know, animals, birds, plants, humans. All that is evolution, and that is all materials, you know, elements coming together, Panch Mahabhutas. Where is the need to bring God? And then they say that objects are existing. They are existing. But what we say is objects are not existing, they have existence. So it sounds the same. They say object is existence. We say no, object has existence. When they say object is existence, then as we know, existence never perishes. That is the first definition of what, if anything truly exists, it is the same in past, present, and future. It is never perishing. So this world of objects would never perish, but we see that there is constant change. There is, you know, people are born, they get old and they, you know, pass away. Objects, we get a new car, it becomes old. So everything is changing. And then they say, well, these objects together create life. But objects can never create life. They talk about these nerve endings. Because think about it, even though all the world scientists have been working on this for years, they have not been able to even create a single living protozoa that can multiply. They talk about artificial intelligence, but that is all advanced computers. They have not even been able to create a single cell, despite having all the materials. They have all the carbon and the phosphorus. So the point is that there is something called light or awareness or consciousness, which illumines and gives life to existent beings, and that is awareness. And that is what we are talking about. That's what we will talk about today. What is this light of awareness? And then Purva Pakshi, another guy comes, he says, Arey, yaar, you know, you are just wasting our time. You are telling me that I have to reach or know some Atma. We say, yeah, Atma or Brahman or Khan. Yeah, but what you say, but it cannot be known by the intellect. We say, yeah. So he says, you are telling me to know something which cannot be known. And then you are saying, then you will be very happy and you abide in that. How am I going to abide in something that I cannot know with my intellect? And they have a very valid point. In fact, the answer was given by one thinker. He says, without becoming a thinker, think about that which cannot be thought of. So what? He says, without becoming a thinker, think about that which cannot be thought of. You say, well, you know, can you please talk in English? You know, we don't understand. It's like the Zen Buddhists say, you know, listen to the sound of one hand clapping, you know. So the point is that when the intellect tries to objectify this Brahman, that Brahman is something I should know, then the intellect fails, because this cannot be known as an object. But what is it and how does this manifest? So we'll do this shloka. That was the brief introduction to this particular shloka about what the Purva Pakshis, that is what they are saying, is those who are opposed to this philosophy. That is how they talk. So Nana Chidra. Nana Chidra means numerous holes. Chidra is hole. That is in all languages. Ghata Udara. Ghatodara is Ghata Udara. So in the pot, in the stomach of the pot, inside the pot, in the center of the pot, Sthita. Sthita means is placed. So there is a pot with many holes. And in that is placed what? Mahadeepa, a great light, a lamp. You can say a lamp with, in the olden days was a wick lamp, but now you can say an electric light. So you have placed with a wire an electric light in the middle of the pot. Prabha Bhaswaram, and the light of this pot is shining. And what does this light do? Because there are multiple holes. So we'll talk. So Jnanam Yasya. So same way, the light of consciousness is shining as if in our head inside, and Chakshur Jnanam Yasya. So that knowledge of that consciousness, Chakshu Adi Karanaha. Tu means indeed, certainly, Chakshu Adi Karana. So eyes, etc. Karana. So all sense organs. When they say eyes, etc., they mean eyes, ears, nose, skin, tongue, all the 5 sense organs. Chakshur Adi Karana Dwara Bahi Spandate. It shines outside, just as the light in the pot, like Navratri, they make those pots and they have holes and then they have a light in the middle. And when they put the light on, it shines in all directions and makes a very beautiful pattern. So similarly, the light of consciousness within us shines out through these sense organs, eyes, ears, nose, skin, etc. We'll talk more about that, quoting the Mundak Upanishad. And Janami. And then what happens when the light of consciousness shines outside? Janami iti. I know. Iti. And I know what? I know objects. I don't know Brahman. I don't know Atma, but I know the world of objects, animals, plants, mountains, sky, everything. I know because of this light of consciousness. And then he quotes the famous mantra from the Upanishad, which we do our arti. Tameva bhantam anubhati etat samastam jagat. So tam eva bhantam, that or you, that consciousness alone, bhantam. When that consciousness shines, anubhati, anu means following, anubhati. So after this consciousness, all of us shine. We all manifest because of the light of consciousness. Not only we, but etat samastam jagat. This entire universe is illumined or known because of this light of consciousness. And who is that light of consciousness? That is Bhagavan Dakshinamurti himself, who has manifested as a guru. So we can start briefly with Drigdrishya Vivek. I think Neeru and all of you had covered that a few textbooks back. But briefly, in Drigdrishya Vivek, objects are seen, eyes are the seer. But eyes are not affected by the objects. If the objects are green or yellow or blue, the eyes don't become green or yellow or blue. Eyes are one pair of eyes, objects are many. Now, eyes is known to who? To the mind, the state of the eye. So if the eyes are blurry, or if I have a cataract, the mind does not become blurry or get a cataract. Mind still knows that the eyes are blurry. So eyes are known to the mind. So mind is the seer of the eyes. And the condition of the mind is known to consciousness as, that's why I know the condition of my mind. I know my mind is happy, my mind is unhappy, my intellect is confused. Mind includes mind and intellect. So that one light of consciousness knows everything, knows the mind, knows the eyes, and knows the objects. In the Mundak Upanishad, very beautifully it is described. Gurudev also quotes in his commentary. He says there are 7 fires, which are the flames are coming out. From where they arise? From that consciousness. That is what Mundak Upanishad says. So what are the 7 holes through which the fires come out? The 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nostrils, and 1 mouth. So from these 7 holes, these fires are coming out. The fire means the light of consciousness is coming out through these 7 holes. And what are the fuel for this fire? They say sense objects, because sense objects are constantly fed through these fires into so that there is knowledge. And that knowledge is given by what? By the oblations. So the fuel is the one that nourishes the fire, but it is the oblations that are poured by the Panditji that goes deep in and makes that Havan, purified. So similarly, oblations are this knowledge, the knowledge that occurs when this sense object. So if I'm seeing a pen or I'm seeing a computer or anything, modern science says, the light from the computer goes through the pupil to the retina, and that's how the object is known. We say, no, that's not it. Because if the consciousness is not there, the object will not be seen. Even if my mind is not there, if I'm thinking about somebody else and somebody walks in front of me, a good friend of mine, I won't see him or her. And then that person will say, what? I walked in front of you. You say, I didn't see you. So the mind and the consciousness are required. So what we say is that the consciousness goes out through the mind and through the sense organs to illumine the world of objects. And obviously eyes can see, ears can hear, nose can smell, tongue can taste, skin and touch. Each one has their own sense organ. A ear cannot see, eyes cannot smell. So each one does their function efficiently, and then that knowledge is given to the mind. The mind then presents it to the intellect, but the mind can only function when consciousness is there. So they say, does consciousness illumine this world directly or indirectly? So we say that consciousness illumines the mind directly, the world indirectly, because the mind then gets to know the world. What do we mean by illumine the mind, or what we call as indirect? So again, the example is of the sun. We have talked many times, but the sun is there, and outside my window is a mirror and a stone. Now the sun is falling equally on both, but the mirror shines the light and reflects it into the room. The stone cannot. So my room is indirectly illumined by the sun through the mirror. So mirror becomes the medium to illumine my room. So similarly, the mind and intellect, in that there is a reflection of consciousness called Chidabhas. I know that you have talked about many times in your Tuesday class, but Chidabhasa is the reflection of consciousness upon this mind and intellect, which then illumines or provides sentiency to the mind and intellect. And that is how you and I are able to walk, talk, function. So of course, this Brahman is not only the knower, but is also the doer, because it is because of Brahman that we are able to walk, talk, and so on. But this shloka does not talk about doership, only talks about knowledge. So the example also can be given about the sun. Like, does the sun illumine the earth? Yes, directly. But indirectly, at night, it illumines through the moon, right? Last night was a full moon. And at night, the sun is still illumining the earth, but indirectly using the medium of the moon. So similarly, this consciousness uses the medium of the mind and intellect to illumine this world for us. So that the medium, is one point. Then how does this knowledge takes place? So they have a word called vritti. Vritti means thought modification. So like to give you an example, I say, think about elephant. So immediately in your mind, a vritti comes of elephant, right? Or if I say ant, then vritti will come of ant. But if I say gudu gada gada, does any vritti come? No, because you don't know. You know what is an ant, you know what is an elephant, but you don't know what gudu gada gada means. So it does not create a vritti. Or if two people are talking Russian and we don't know Russian at all, and they may be talking for half an hour and enjoying the conversation, but if we are sitting there, we'll get bored because no vritti is created. So vritti is a thought modification because of which knowledge takes place. So I think last week Auntie was asking, so there are actually three aspects: pramata, pramanam, and prameya. And then there is a fourth one, which we didn't talk last time, which is called prama. So pramata is the knower, pramanam is the instrument, prameya is the known, and that knowledge that occurs is called prama. That is the fourth. So to give you an example, say if I have never seen a kangaroo, never even seen a picture of a kangaroo, and I go to Australia, and so this guide takes me, to some remote area, and then he says, I say, what are these animals jumping around? He says, that is kangaroo. You have never seen kangaroo? No, I have never seen this unusual animal. So that time, who is the pramata? I am the pramata. I am the knower. Who is the pramanam? Is the guide. Or you can say my eyes, or the guide becomes the pramanam. And prameya is kangaroo. And once I have understood, then what happens is prama. That is the fourth one. So there are four aspects. Prama means the knowledge. I have known kangaroo. Now, anytime anybody tells me kangaroo, I'll say, yeah, I know what kangaroo looks like. Even if somebody shows me a picture of a kangaroo, I'll say yes. So similarly, in this path of realization, I am the ego, the jiva is the pramata, is trying to know. Pramanam are the Vedas. Prameya, in the path of enlightenment, is Brahman, to be known. And once a person has understood that is me, which is the enlightenment or the moksha or the wisdom, then that knowledge is called Prama. So through these scriptures, Bhagavan Shankaracharya ji is trying to take us to that Prama, to that understanding. So this book becomes the Pramanam for me, or the Guru, Shankaracharya ji or Swami Chinmayananda, who has written a commentary on this text. And very clear knowledge has to take place. It cannot be shaky knowledge. Knowledge has to be very clear. So talking about clear knowledge, there was this, you all heard of King Solomon, right? He was famous for his justice. So one time, two ladies dragged a young man. They were dragging him by each hand to King Solomon. And one said, this man, he promised to marry my daughter. Second one says, no, he promised to marry my daughter. So each one is pulling his hand. So King Solomon asks him, what do you have to say? He keeps silent. He doesn't say anything. He says, speak. Doesn't say anything. So King Solomon, in his wisdom, says, okay, we'll cut him in half. And one lady can take one half. You remember that baby story. And other lady can take the other half. And that's how each daughter will get half. What else can I do? He's not talking. So one lady said, yeah, that's fine. Cut him in half. Other lady said, nay, bichara, he's such a young, handsome man. Don't cut him. So Solomon said, the first lady will get this man. He said, first lady, she wanted him to be cut up in half. He said, yeah, she will be a good mother-in-law. I shouldn't tell this joke in Devi group because I might get beaten up, but thank God I'm alone and on Zoom. So, but so the clear knowledge has to take place, and that is called Brahma. And then what happens? Janami, I know, but I know objects. Like I know a pen, I know the, and then also Gurudev says, Nyatam, once I have understood, like this person who has understood kangaroo. So same way, once he has understood, then Nyatam iti maya, it is known by me. Now this light of consciousness, always they say it cannot become an object, cannot become drishya, like in Drig Drishya Vivek. Ultimately, you reach the ultimate drishta called Atma or consciousness, which is the subject which knows everything, knows the condition of the mind, the eyes, the objects, but itself cannot become an object. It is the subject. And that's what the Purva Pakshi asked, how am I to know it? You have to own up to this knowledge that that is me. That is my true nature. But they say that this Atman or consciousness is actionless. It actually does not do anything. Like the sun does not say, I'm going to illumine the mirror, which reflects, I'm not going to illumine the stone. No, the sun is spreading its light everywhere. And actually the sunlight itself only reflects when there is a reflecting medium. Like if you go into space, it is all black, even though the sunlight is passing through. Sunlight can only be seen when the atmosphere of the earth reflects. So it is reflected consciousness, reflected sunlight. So same way, this consciousness is actionless. Itself does not do anything. But in the presence of consciousness, the mind and intellect get illumined, just as in the presence of sunlight and the atmosphere, our world gets illumined. So similarly, in the presence of consciousness, the consciousness does not say, I am busy, creating the world or illumining the world. The consciousness is ever there in its own bliss, but whatever comes in contact with consciousness, but has to have the ability to reflect. It has to be subtle. That's why the mind and intellect is said to be the subtle body, because it has the ability to reflect. The body doesn't. The gross body cannot reflect consciousness, just as a mirror has the ability to reflect, the stone does not. But one thing about this consciousness, it not only reflects knowledge, but also reflects ignorance. So to give an example, I know English. Now that is known to consciousness. But I don't know Russian, that also I know, right? I have knowledge of English, but I have ignorance of Russian. So this light of consciousness illumines knowledge and illumines ignorance both. That's why even in deep sleep, this light of consciousness is there. We won't go into detail today because that is in the 6th shloka. But suppose these holes are covered, in this pot, the holes are all covered, but the light will still keep on shining, but the light will not come out. So we'll talk in more detail in the 6th shloka in 2 weeks. So ignorance is also illumined by consciousness. Janami and na janami, both are illumined by that one light of consciousness. Now, why am I not able to experience that? So they say that we have 3 defects, all of us. One is mala, one is vikshepa, one is avarana. Mala means impurity. So all the impurity, kam, krodh, mad, moh, lobh, matsarya, anger, greed, jealousy, hatred, arrogance, pride, all of those are our mala. So how do I remove that? By doing karma yoga. When I do karma yoga, then automatically my anger, greed, jealousy, all reduces. So doing karma yoga removes mala. Like in the water, if the water is very dirty, then the sunlight won't be reflected. Say there is a bucket of water. Or if the water is agitated, then also the sunlight won't be reflected. The water has to be still and clean, only then sunlight can be reflected. So here mala is the dirt, is like the dirty water. So when I have a lot of dirt, all these negative qualities, then the light of consciousness even within me will illumine, but will not be pure, just as the sunlight won't be pure if the mud is dirty, the reflection. Then the second is vikshepa or agitation. And agitation is too much rajas. Too much rajas is there. So the first mala comes from, again, dirt, negative qualities. When there is too much rajas, too much activity, then again, I cannot sit still and meditate. I have to reduce my activity, quieten my mind and sit down. So a pure mind, which has negative, free of negativities, and a quiet mind. Then with that pure and quiet mind, I go to a guru because I still have avarana. I have the covering of ignorance. So the Guru, Dakshinamurti, or whoever, Swami Chinmayananda, Gurudev, or Shankaracharya ji, whoever, they remove my ignorance. So three defects are removed: mala, avarana, and vikshepa. Then Gurudev says in his commentary that when all these three are removed and when a person sits for meditation, he or she has to say Aham Brahmasmi and all the qualities of Brahman. I have to, whatever I have studied, I have to try and abide in that knowledge. And all of these, that I am immutable, I am eternal, I am, you can say it in Sanskrit, you can say it in English, you can say it in Gujarati, Hu Brahman Chu, whatever you want to say, but the idea is that I am that understanding. So after these three are done, then what happens is Savikalpa Samadhi, where still the thought that I am meditator and I am meditating, but my thought modification becomes very, very minimal. So that is the state where the person experiences joy, experiences bliss, experiences peace, silence. And then the fifth, next stage after that is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which these great Mahatmas, Buddha, and all these great Acharyas talk about, where there is no difference between meditator, meditated, and meditating. So all of them become one. Right now, I am meditating on Brahman, right? That is how we sit. But ultimately, Brahman alone is, and that I disappear. So that is the process of knowledge. But you say, I have been doing it for so long. I have been hearing it for so long. Since 20 years, all the Swamis are coming and telling me, you are that, you are that, you are that. Why am I not able to abide in this knowledge? They say, do those three: remove negativities, reduce your activity, get knowledge. And if still that doesn't work, pray. Prayer is the most important thing. Bhagwan, I alone cannot do it. That clear understanding should be there. You go to the Lord and say, Bhagwan, whatever your Ishta Devta is, pray to that, or Dakshinamurti Bhagwan, or Shankaracharya ji, or Puja Gurudev, that I alone am not able. And that is true. A jiva by himself or herself cannot attain enlightenment. All we can do is through knowledge, through karma yoga, through bhakti, come and surrender at the feet of the Lord and say, Bhagwan, aage mere se nahi hoga. And when we reach that state of surrender, where then that intellect even gives up, that I alone cannot do it, when that surrender happens, then Lord's grace descends upon us. So it's not that God is selectively, but one who has chosen God exclusively, that I want God and God and God alone, and that has become my motive, that has become my goal in life, that has become my purpose, then God's grace will descend. So we have to do our part. We have to do karma yoga, bhakti, jnana, do all of those, do pujas, do whatever is required to purify the mind, and then ultimately surrender. That's what Mirabai is like. You see, she just surrendered. Mere to Giridhar Gopal dusra na koi. So that surrender, and all these great saints, even these Western saints, they talk about the dark night before the dawn, where ultimately they reach a state of hopelessness that I cannot do it. And then God's grace descends. So it requires both. It requires Purushartha, my effort, and requires God's grace. So that understanding, when it happens, say, well, what is the benefit of that? So they say that such a person becomes free of sorrow. So you say, you mean sorrow will never happen to this individual? He will never have any problems? No, it's not that sorrow. As long as you are living in this body, there will be joys and sorrows. Some close person might, even a realized master, say his parents pass away, or somebody close by pass away, or some sorrowful thing happens, or one of his children, God forbid, he maybe not be, maybe he's married, and one of his children, something bad happens. So joy and sorrow will still be there in this individual, even though that person is enlightened. But the person knows that I do not depend on my mind for happiness, because I am happiness. I do not depend on the mind. The mind one day will be happy, one day will be sorrowful. And he knows. That's why Yasmin sthito na dukhe na guru napi vichalyate. Bhagavan Sri Krishna says that one who is established in this knowledge, even the greatest sorrow comes to this person, he is not affected by. Not that he becomes like a stone and there is no joy and sorrow. Yeah, joy and sorrow will be there, and he will, whatever is required, he will do at that moment. If there is a physical problem, he will go take care of it. If there is but inside he knows that I am happiness, I am Brahman. And the body will go through its problems. Body will go through joys and sorrows and pains and ulcers and all those problems. But inside, this person is quiet, is still, is unaffected. So they say, when you wake up, what is your first experience? The first experience is I am, and that is Atma. And then you say, okay, I am Lata, and I am in my room, and now it is 7 o'clock in the morning and the sun is shining, or it's 5 o'clock, I should get up and meditate. So all those thoughts arise after I am. And then I am so and so, and this is where I am. So time, space, ego, all these things arise after I am. So I am is the first state. So they say, I am seeing objects, but I'm not seeing Brahman. People say, I see everything, but I don't see Brahman. They say, you're seeing objects, that means Brahman is there. He said, like, to give an example, has anybody seen their eyes? You say, well, I have seen in the mirror. No, not in the mirror, but aside from the mirror, has anybody seen their eyes? No, we haven't seen our eyes. But if I look and I can see a bird or a mountain, that means I have eyes, right? The fact that I'm seeing this computer, that means my eyes are there. I don't need any other proof that eyes are there, because I'm able to see, or I'm able to hear. That's why I have ears. Ears means you may have the ears, but even the inner ability to hear. So that is what the oblations in that 7 fires are poured, so that the inner, the ahutis create the inner understanding. That is the message of Mundaka Upanishad. So if I am Brahman, then only I am able to see, hear, smell, taste, touch. And this knowledge of I am Brahman is independent. Whether I know I am Brahman or I don't know I am Brahman, I am still Brahman. An ignorant man is as much Brahman as a wise man. It's not that Brahman is more in a wise man and less in an ignorant. Brahman is the same. Nirdosham hi samam Brahma. So Brahman is the same, whether it's in an animal or in a bird or in a plant or in a fish or even in inanimate objects, rocks, stones, wise people, unwise people. Brahman is one, Brahman is same, Brahman is unaffected, but it is my wrong understanding that I am not Brahman and one day I will become Brahman. When I have studied the scriptures and then I'm sitting in deep meditation somewhere in, top of the Himalayas or in some cave, and then suddenly the light will shine and then I will become Brahman. No, even now we are all Brahman, we just don't know it. So all you have to do is own up to this knowledge that I am Brahman. And then the last line, Tameva Bhantam Anubhati Sarvam. So I'll very briefly translate that arti that we do, and then we'll end with that. Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam. So tatra means in that consciousness, because we always think of Brahman as that somewhere far away. Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam. So the sun, the moon or the stars cannot illumine that consciousness, means cannot make that consciousness known to us. It's not that in the sunlight I see Brahman and in the darkness I don't. Brahman is always there. Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam nema vidyuto bhanti kutoyam agnihi. Even lightning cannot illumine. Then how about this arti I am doing? How can this arti reach Bhagavan? Kutoyam agnihi. So he says, Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam. That's what Shankaracharya ji says in the third line. That alone, light of consciousness is illumining this arti. So to remind myself that that light of consciousness is not only illumining the arti that I'm offering, but illumining me and anubhati sarvam. Everything is illumined. So the purpose of arti to show to God is not to be done as a ritual, but to understand that there is this light of consciousness that is illumining this fire and illumining me, and I express my gratitude and my understanding to Bhagavan that, oh Lord, it is because of you that everything is shining. So that is the essence of this particular shloka, that Dakshinamurti Bhagavan, Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam. So I prostrate to Dakshinamurti Bhagavan, who is what is the light of consciousness within us, and it is shining out through the various holes of the eyes, ears, etc. And because of that, I am Janami. I know everything, and it is that light which is illumining my mind and intellect and is illumining Chakshuradi Karana, eyes, etc. So that understanding, that this is a very beautiful shloka, because anytime you open your eyes and you see, the attention should go to who is seeing. Or when you hear something, who is hearing? You say, I am hearing. So who am I? Then you think I am this ego, and then attention should go to the ultimate knower. So that's what Shankaracharya is reminding us, that there is this light of consciousness, which is not only inside, but is everywhere, but manifests in my mind as intellect, as Chidabhasa. And that is this beautiful shloka. It's such a nice shloka to cover. I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity. It's the most beautiful text. It has been my favorite for a long time, but now I am getting to study it even better. So that is the essence of this fourth shloka. We have about 10 minutes. If anybody has any comments, questions. Anybody would like to add anything different?
Hari Om, Anilji.
Hari Om.
Could you explain meditating and I couldn't follow that. I couldn't continue.
Oh, okay. So
three.
When I sit for meditation, I am meditating on Brahman. See, when we say Jati, Niti, Kula, Gotra, Durgam, or ya say Mano, Buddha, Hankar, Chitta, Ninaham. So we first start by meditating by doing japa. You can use a mala to do japa and then do some breathing, pranayam. So when we do breathing or pranayam, if you go to firstpower.info, there are some talks on meditation by me, also on Bhagavad Gita, but this introduction to meditation is there. So when I do this japa and chant the name of the Lord, it can be any name, Om Namah Shivaya, Shri Krishna Sharanam. And then also I breathe in and out, do this anulom vilom, this breathing. So through breathing and through japa or chanting the name of the Lord, the mind becomes relatively quiet. It becomes single pointed. Instead of thinking of all objects, now I'm thinking of God, whether it's Sri Krishna or Shiva or Mother Saraswati, whichever God or goddess I'm thinking of, whatever form of God I'm thinking of. So when the mind becomes quiet, then in that quiet mind, the idea has to come that I am not this body, I am not the mind, I am not Mohini, I am not a female, I am not neither young nor old, I am Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. I am that eternal light of consciousness. That is my true nature. So slowly what will happen is that the mind, quiet mind, will then revel in that knowledge. Bhagavan Shri Krishna says in the 6th chapter, Atma samstham mana kritva na kinchidapi chintaye. So the mind which is stilled is centered in consciousness within, that I am that consciousness. And when that oneness occurs, then the mind becomes quiet. And in that silence, the experience of that inner bliss is.
Anil, she is asking about Triputi.
Is that what you were asking? Or
Yeah, Triputi.
You want to explain?
That one she is asking.
Go ahead, explain.
No, you explain.
Okay. So meditator, meditated, and meditating. So these are the three. So I am the meditator. I am meditating on Brahman, right? So there are three. But in the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, all three become one. The Triputi disappears and one alone remains. Brahman alone remains. Then I am no longer there. That's why Kabir Das ji said, Hari hai to main nahi, main hu to Hari nahi. If God is there, I am not there. If I am there, then God is not there. So when God alone is, then that I disappears. So that triad disappears of meditator.
Yeah, triad is always there in all the worldly experience. That also mentioned.
Right. Yeah, like eater, eating, eaten, or driver, driving, driven. The car is being driven. I am the driver. I am driving the car, or I am eating the mango. So that the triad is always there. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. This is what I was asking.
Okay, thank you, Neeru, pointed out here. But also, I just briefly mentioned the process of meditation.
And also, I think this Gyanendriya, that's why they are called Gyanendriya, because the consciousness is going through these indriyas out. So all these are 7 holes that you were talking about. They're called Gyanendriya. And they themselves don't have their own consciousness. It is borrowed from this.
Right. Thank you.
So through these 7 holes, you said oblations are this knowledge.
Yes.
Is that what it is?
So
what am I offering through these 7 holes? What am I offering?
That's a good question. So in the Mundak Upanishad, they say these eyes are the fire goes out. And the sense objects are the fuel which is poured into the fire to keep the fire burning. So like I see a mosquito, then I see a mountain, and then I see an elephant. So all those objects I am seeing, and they are going into the mind. But oblations are that which goes deep within and actually purifies that fire. And so that oblations are the knowledge. When the oblations go, it is said like these 7 holes, where is the knowledge known? In the brain, right? There is a vision center, there's a center of hearing. So these oblations go and nourish that. So oblations are the offerings which ultimately result in knowledge. So when these offerings of these scriptures are made, then the knowledge that occurs in me is prama. That is the understanding.
And
So the
through
point is,
and also through the eyes you see all the all the names and forms. Through ears we hear the sound. Through nose we smell. Through tongue all this food that we taste. All that is happening because of that consciousness. So we are putting in. So that's why they say don't watch too much TV. Don't watch. So instead you watch good things. So you're offering good oblation, then you will purify your mind.
right.
So that is the idea. What it is. The more and more you put the other stuff, the more and more you are making your, ego strong. So practically that's what it should.
That's very good.
How to purify the mind.
Right.
Very
So the
good.
oblations, as Neeru said, is the quality of the oblations will decide, how good it is.
Nama,
it is the-
Rupa, Sparsha, Gandha, all that. That is the 5,
objects.
and
Yeah, Shabda, Sparsha,
that
Rupa,
covers
Rasa,
all
Gandha.
the objects of this world. That covers the whole, actually, world is that only. Nam, Rup, all these 5. Actually, if you think,
Right. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha.
Gandha.
Yeah, these 5. So what is heard, seen, tasted, smelled, and touched? Yeah, Carrie, you had a question?
Well, I kind of had a question mark by that, that what you were just talking about from the Mandukya. And I was thinking, I'm not sure, but I think it was in the chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita where it talks about offerings and like yajnas.
Yagna spirit.
Yajnas.
Yeah, even in the 4th chapter, all the yagnas are also mentioned in the 18th chapter, also in the 4th chapter. The whole 4th chapter is that you offer the knowledge into that. So the Bhagavad Gita, many times Bhagwan talks about these offerings of yagnas.
I thought it was the 18th where they talked about, about the 7, the 7, all the different, it really went through the gross and the subtle and the mind. It went through kind of everything.
Yeah, Bhagwan says, Yajna, Jnana, Tapa, Karma, na tyajyam, karyam evatat. So these 3, Yajna, Dana, and Tapa should not be given out. Yajna means the offering. Dana is charity. Tapa is austerity. So Yajna is mentioned many times in the Bhagavad Gita. 18th chapter, that's how the reference comes.
Yeah.
But in the 4th chapter, he says, like in Swadhyaya, whatever you study, you offer. Whatever charity you do, you offer. Whatever knowledge, everything you offer into that fire of knowledge.
Yes, the fire. Yeah.
So every activity can become an offering to God. Even no matter what you're doing, you are working or you are cooking or you are cleaning your house, every activity can become a yajna if it is offered to God. That's the essence of the 4th chapter. But this Mundak Upanishad is where this, if you read that shloka, the commentary, very beautifully Gurudev has given. It's in section 2, I think shloka 18, Gurudev has mentioned that. But section 2, it's somewhere there, but he has mentioned, here it is, 218.
Okay.
So section 2, 1st chapter, 8th shloka, 218 in Mundak Upanishad. So the commentary it's brief, but very, very well Gurudev has explained that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you everybody. See you next Tuesday. We'll do the closing prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.